True Life and Music History, the Ants Human Stars podcast, with your hosts, Caleb and Digo. Are you ready? Steady. Go. What I wanted to do was iron out, like, also in my head, and just to do this as a topic, to iron out the famous serial killers that, like, we all hear about. Hillside Strangler, Zodiac Killer, Ted Bundy, and stuff like that. And just to, like, okay, who did what, where, when, like, and I'm looking at all these, and they're all from the 70s.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. That's crazy that they were all like, that was just like serial killer time. Or maybe that says something about the kids who were like, I don't know how old they were, but like that says something about like the generation of like the 40s.
Well, that's the thing. Like 40s and 50s, you didn't even lock your doors, right? 60s, oh, it's just living, man. Summer of love, drugs, whatever. And then people...
Unless you're black, and then there was a civil rights movement.
Right.
Yeah.
But in general, everything got feistier in the 60s.
Yeah.
And then, but people still had this idea in the 70s, like, oh, it's cool. Like, it's still like the 50s. I don't have to lock my doors. I don't have to worry about a stranger in the middle of the night. I don't have to worry if I'm a single woman walking alone. Like that hadn't hit yet. And so what happened was that these notorious serial killers like capitalized on this. This kind of like open season on whatever they wanted. And technology wasn't where it was. People still didn't think that there were people killing other people en masse. Like they couldn't think like that's not real.
Which makes me want to like ask like, yeah, we're just talking off our heads. I know you probably haven't thought about this, but I wonder what changed because, yeah, in the 40s, 50s, like that was the idea. I mean, even
That's
before then,
nothing changed. There have always been serial killers.
Well, yeah, they have. But then, like, I think maybe, like, yeah, maybe you already answered it that, like, in the 60s, things were picking up, and yeah, just the world was changing and how we were viewing the world and how we were viewing things. So that added to like this, like, take care of yourself because it's crazy out there.
Many of, again, as these notorious serial killers that I mentioned, I'm going to go over 7 of them. I found this great CNN article called Notorious Killers of the 1970s. There you go. It's by Ryan Bergeren. And, there are actually several articles about the 1970s and books about serial killers in the 1970s. But this particular article was published on my birthday, so I just went with this one. Like I'm like, whoa,
well, okay.
Was it published on that date? This is the one. Okay,
there we go.
I like it.
You've had a connection.
So if the 60s helped spread the message of love and harmony and summer of love, basically the 70s was fear. And here are the 7 most notorious crime sprees, serial killings, mass murders that shocked the American public in the 1970s. I'm also going to include popular films and series that were based on these tragedies, these infamous assholes inflicted on men and women. That was a piece that I added, and just because, like, of course, the Manson, the Zodiac, Ted Bundy, they'll have like series you can go watch and movies you can go see about what they did. Because I'm not the only one that likes true crime.
and then they do a recent one on Ted Bundy because didn't Zac Efron play
Extremely wicked and shockingly evil and vile.
Yeah.
What a name. It's like...
And wasn't Ted Bundy the one that killed all the boys?
No. John Wayne Gacy.
Oh, that was...
But I'll get into it.
Really?
Okay. This is exactly... Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to shut up.
This is No. That was perfect. Because that's happens to me. Even I'm like, wait, what did they do? And just iron it out. All right. This is what this is. This is where this is, because it's also... Not everything was in California. But there were a lot of killers in California. Anywho. So let's start with the Manson family. Charles Manson and 3 of his followers were found guilty of the murders of Sharon Tate, the LeBiancas, and 4 others on January 25th, 1971. So they're starting it out with a bang. And again, during these times, people just didn't believe that people could just kill. Like there had to be a reason.
And there was no motive. Right.
Yeah, that's what it is. Like there was. What do you mean? With no reason? No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the killers were originally they were given the death penalty, but California later abolished the death penalty, so they were reduced to sentences for life. This, I'm not a proponent of death penalty, but if they had killed them, they wouldn't have been able to run things from jail, because being locked away didn't stop the threat of Manson's mayhem. His followers still believed in his helter-skelter message, and they were trying to impress him with violent acts. It's kind of like like a mob boss is still in jail, and he's kind of lightly running from jail kind of thing. The most noteworthy came on September 5th, 1975, when the Manson family member Lynette Squeaky Fromm pulled a gun on President Gerald Ford in a failed assassination attempt. Yeah, I didn't know about this. As Time magazine wrote in the quote, "The girl who almost killed Ford," it was a chilling reminder that not even those with Secret Service protection are safe from violence in America. Quote from the article. Squeaky Fromm's mad act in a Sacramento park with a .45 in her small hand had an immediate sobering effect on the 1976 presidential election campaign. All too clearly, everyone could visualize candidates being attacked in similar ways. The incident was also a vivid and sickening reminder of one of the most disturbing paradoxes of America. Could still exist. The fact that such a liberal and free society should somehow generate a sprinkling of warped souls who, for dark reasons of their own, seek to work out their own frustration by destroying, and this article says, destroying political leaders. Let's just say destroying lives. Like, and now it's just like political, anybody.
Exactly. Because everybody's human, so it's not like anybody's life is
Now the movie I'm going to recommend for the Manson family, this isn't like all others are kind of like movies that were made to dramatize certain serial killers or whatever. But this one, not so much. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie that came out in 2019. Actually,
with like Leonardo DiCaprio and stuff.
Actually centers around the Manson family.
I think I heard that. Yeah.
But it's his new wave of movies where like Glorious Bastards and centers around Hitler and Nazi, whatever. But he makes up history, how
the world around it,
how it like he just makes it like a happy ending, So if you haven't seen Inglourious Bastards, too bad, spoiler, they kill all the Nazis. That's what happens instead of, what ended up. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, well, you see a lot of the, you see Sharon Tate, you see, these people, and they don't end up killing them. They actually, Brad Pitt and the other characters, they end up killing the Manson family killers, So it was a kind of, but you see the era, you see how it was. So I still recommend it because it gives you a feel of what we're talking about and how it was for women and how easy it could be during that time. The Zodiac Killer. The Manson family murders, they were in California, sent shockwaves through Hollywood because that's where the murders took place.
Also, that's also why it was so big. Exactly. Because it was like Beverly Hills and famous people. And
again,
rich.
No people. Locked doors. We're in a rich neighborhood. Like, who's gonna come and fuck us up? Well, During that same time, though, of course, we're in the 70s, there was a killer terrorizing the San Francisco Bay Area, the Zodiac Killer. And he, like, or she, or, you know, who knows, ushered a new era of serial killers, the ones who were smart enough to get away with the murder, but at the same time wanted publicity. It's kind of like, it wasn't just, I want to kill people and escape. No, I want to kill people. And I want people to know that I'm the one who's killing those people, but not me, just that I'm this persona, you know, this dark force that I'm killing. The Zodiac Killer became famous for a series of cryptograms and coded letters that he sent to the press. In the letters, the killer admitted to the murders outright, threatening for more killings, and was believed to have given hints about his true identity. Zodiac was believed to have killed at least 5 people during the 60s, but could also be responsible for more since he was never captured. So, you know, there were a few definitely linked to him in the 60s, but then he was never caught, and there were always murders. So it's just, you know, could still be alive today, or, you know, maybe not. And, you know, the police did look into several suspects, but no one has ever been identified as a Zodiac Killer or charged with the killings to him or her or neither or both. What if it was just like a kid? No. Stop. Terrible.
Chucky.
Zodiac Killer movie, Zodiac, 2007. David Fincher film. I've seen this one. It's really good. It's got what's his name from Donnie Darko?
What's that?
It's like this indie movie that was so in 2001. Whoa. Donnie Darko, Jake Gyllenhaal. You know that guy?
Yeah. But I don't know him from that.
Well, I think he is the Zodiac in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's the detective trying to find him is the Hulk in today's time.
Oh, what's the name?
Forget.
Ruffalo?
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo.
Something like that. Yeah. Good movie. I like that one. So, and they don't stop because we got the infamous John Wayne Gacy, and this is the one that, like, so hey, I'm going to real. A lot of these people killed women, not John Wayne Gacy. While California grappled with its cults and unsolved mysteries, a serial killer with an eye for young men plagued Chicago. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, would go down as one of the most notorious serial killers in history. In 1978, Gacy confessed to murdering 33 teenage boys and young men, but he could be responsible for more. He just simply doesn't know how much. Many of the murders took place in his own home, where he would sexually assault and strangle the young men to death, among so many things. We don't need to get into it, but it was way more than just simple deaths. He did whatever he wanted, and there was no. They never.
He was basically sadistic.
Yeah, and he buried the bodies in the property. He just brought people over, did what he wanted, buried them underneath the house. Almost all of his victims were buried in a crawl space underneath the house. Gacy spent 14 years on death row, and he was eventually executed on May 10th, 1994. John Wayne Gacy movie, To Catch a Killer, 1992, by Eric Till, sorry. Now, somebody else who was extreme, the infamous, the one and only, Ted Bundy. While Gacy targeted young men, Ted went for young women. The man who should have incited the most fear may have seemed the least suspicious of them all. As Time wrote in, quote, the case of the Chi Omega, or the Chi, the Chi Omega killer. So, you know, he started his whole thing, and he would go into like universities and abduct women. crazy. He would just, I remember one story, like he abducted somebody while the other roommate was in the room. Like one of those like urban legends kind of things. Like, you know, that crazy urban legend where it's, you hear something in your room in the middle of the night and then you wake up and it's blood sprawled on the wall. Aren't you glad you stayed asleep or something like that, like, oh my God, something. I think that's where that comes from, because he would go in and sneak and take while other people were asleep.
Dang.
So as Time wrote in this article called The Case of the Chi Omega Killer, on July 16th, 1979, Bundy did not conform to the typical psychopath stereotypes. This is a quote from the article. The defendant is an unlikely looking murder suspect. It's a difficult sentence. He doesn't look like a murder suspect. He's handsome. I've never found him handsome. I've seen all sorts of pictures, and of course they use what's his face, Efron, and I'm like, whoa, you're way too handsome for Ted.
Stretching. That's a stretch.
That's a stretch. Yeah,
that's a real stretch. And by stretch I mean like giraffe stretch, like not a human stretch.
They always say he's handsome. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, now this rest could be true. So handsome, articulate, composed, former law student who in his blue suit is almost indistinguishable from defense lawyers clustered around him. Nonetheless, Bundy is suspected by police of being one of the worst mass murderers in U.S. history, responsible for a trail of up to 36 young women and victims, spanning for years and spanning 4 states. Bundy was convicted of killing 2 women in Chi Omega sorority in Tallahassee, Florida, and was sentenced to death. Before his execution in 1989, Bundy confessed to killing 36 women, but many believe he is responsible for deaths of 100 or more. As we mentioned earlier, extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile is the next Netflix movie with Zac Efron, directed by Joe Berlinger. I did not see that.
I haven't seen that either.
Mostly because it was that. I was like, why did they have this handsome man playing this Ted Bundy character? I'm like,
well, no, that was totally a thing. I remember when it came out that people were talking about how it's like, you guys, he did these disgusting, horrendous things, and now you guys are trying to like sexualize him.
Exactly.
By getting somebody like Zac Efron. So it's like, oh my gosh, he did these terrible things, but he's so cute. Like,
and I don't think it was like, that's not how he got women from what I've heard, all this. No, he was a reasonably normal looking man. He wasn't ugly or anything. Okay. Handsome is a stretch, but just a normal dude. And he would do things like, he would park his car somewhere knowing that, there were victims around. He would choose a victim and he would be, he'd have crutches on and he'd like want to carry something to the car. And like, he'd ask, unfortunately, an unsuspecting woman to help him. And then he would just take over and throw her in there and go do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. The killing spree of Son of Sam was in New York, and it was publicized around the world. Beginning in the summer of 1976, 6 people were killed and 7 others were wounded by a .44 caliber gun. The murder weapon was the main link police had for the crimes until April 1977, when Berkowitz left his first letter near the scene of a crime. The letter is the first time Berkowitz uses the name Son of Sam. Berkowitz wrote more letters as Son of Sam, taunting the police and about future murders that followed that summer. His victims were usually young women with long dark hair, reports which caused many New Yorkers to panic. According to the Time article, quote, "Son of Sam is not sleeping." And here's a quote from that article. "Terrified parents in the area are now insisting that their daughters wear their long hair up, bleach it, or have dates at home. Some girls have decided not to date until the killer is caught. or till COVID is over. And others are adopting unusual evening wear, loose sweaters, large caps to disguise themselves as males. I'm scared, said one of the girls from Queens. I used to kiss my boyfriend in front of the house. Now I just run inside. Berkowitz was arrested on August 10th, 1977, and was sentenced to 6 life sentences, which he is still currently serving. Summer of Sam is a movie that was made in 1999 by Spike Lee. So this is probably worth a watch. I have not seen this either, but hey, I will watch a Spike Lee. I just watched the last one I watched was for one of the episodes,
Black Klansman.
The Black Klansman. Exactly.
I still need to watch that. I was so upset because they had it on, I think, HBO Go or something, and then they literally took it off. It was the day that I went to look it up. Like, that was the last day it was on there, but I didn't have time to watch it. So anyways, but I'll find it.
Okay. The Hillside Strangler. The Hillside Strangler was around in the late 70s. Not long after the capture of the son of Sam, fear began to spread around everywhere. They were like, okay, this is now, what the fuck? So from October 1977 to 78, bodies of 10 women were found in a hilly area above the city. Hence, Hillside Strangler. With no leads, the media began attributing the victims to this Hillside Strangler. It was only after Kenneth Bianchi was arrested in the killings of 2 women in Washington state that he confessed to being the Hillside Strangler. Angelo Buono was his partner in crime. It was his cousin. So Bianchi and Buono were both sentenced to life in prison without parole. Buono died from a heart attack in 2002. Bianchi still remains in prison. The Hillside Strangler, simply put, a 2004 film by Chuck Perrello. And again, while I was looking up for movies and series that you may want to watch if you want to see a dramatized version of these, I try to look for the one that seemed the most popular, most well-received, the highest rated, because there's obviously for Ted Bundy, who, a lot of movies. Yeah. Zodiac Killer. Yeah. Whew, there's lots of movies. So these are just one of many. There's also good documentaries
that's what I'd like more than
that cover these.
Probably.
Yeah. But like, what I also wanted to bring out is like, so these serial killers, there are new boogeymen. They are. So back then there were like ghosts and shit. No. Now we have serial killers. We don't need Jason to exist. Like, no, they exist already. And in that moment when you're, hopefully no one ever gets to experience it, but in that moment when you're being killed by this whoever, that person is Jason, Freddy, Chucky, everything. So exactly, you don't need to go out to Supernatural to kind of get these kind of iconic. There's another word, forget. But anyway,
but popular, well known killers and stuff. I just looked up the original Freddy Krueger movie, and I think it came out in 84.
Some in the 80s.
Yeah, and so I just looked that up just because I find 84. So it's interesting that all these killers you're talking about came from the 70s, and then I don't know about Jason and everybody else, but I know like Scream was the 90s and stuff.
There was an explosion of those slashers in the 80s because of this. Yeah, if you had tried to do that in the 60s and 70s, people would be like, "What? What the fuck? We can't do this. This is don't put this into people's minds. This isn't how people work." And then you're like, oh no,
that is definitely how people work. And so you see a correlation, which is interesting.
And you brought up Freddy, and actually, I did actually watch A Nightmare on Elm Street recently, and Freddy, the backstory is that he killed a bunch of kids, And then the neighborhood, like the parents from the neighborhood, went to where he was and burned his house down. So that's why he's all like burned.
And he comes
for kids
in your sleep and stuff. And yeah,
but
he does.
That is like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy wrapped into a supernatural figure, like somebody who's going after young men and women, because it was like whoever, but it was young people. That like, but of course in the movie he's doing it in like the supernatural dream world. But again, the backstory is that he was doing it to real kids.
Yeah.
And anyway,
and Halloween came out in 1978. And so, anyways, I just find it interesting. I never thought about that, the correlation between what was going on in the world. And then it's like, yeah, now this introduces a whole basically genre of film and art, some people might call it, to the public because of what's actually going on in the world. So.
It was like, you could swallow this now because it exists. Like we've gone for over a decade of, and it has that like intense anxiety, fear when the killer hasn't been caught. So we got the Zodiac, he's never been caught, or some took a while to get caught, and the people were, like, as I mentioned, dyeing their hair, changing their outfits, things that are mimicked in these movies, like staying home or trying to stay awake or trying to do stuff to protect yourself from the serial killers. So I only got one more, and you could argue this one, but it is a lot of people that died, way more than all of these people combined. Jim Jones.
Okay, yes. I know about him.
Jim Jones was the founder of the People's Temple religious movement and the ringleader of the biggest mass murder suicide in history. On November 18th, 1978, Jones led more than 900 people to their deaths as they drank cyanide-laced Kool-Aid in Guyana. Guyana is in South America, not in Africa, which a lot like
they just hear Ghana. They're like, oh, that sounds African.
Yep. It's east of Venezuela, north of Brazil. It's like these tucked away little countries that sit right on the on the eastern side of South America, up by the Gulf of Mexico. They're like these little, and one of them is Guyana, and that's where they went. He went down there, bought some land, set up the thing. As Time magazine noted in their article, quote, "The lure of doomsday," the event would become a dark bookmark for the decade. Quote, "The Jonestown story, like some Joseph Conrad drama of fanaticism and moral emptiness, has gone directly into popular myth. It will be remembered as an emblematic identifying moment of the decade. A demented American psychopomp in a tropical cult house, doling out cyanide with Kool-Aid. Jonestown is the paramount of 70s cult movement. Just as Altamont... Wait. Sorry. I'm going to cut that out. Jones, because I mean, like, who's Altamont? I don't know who this person is. The sentence is, Jonestown is the Altamont of the 70s cult movement. You know what? I'm going to keep it in. Somebody out there find out what the hell Altamont... I can just search it right now, but I don't feel like it. Just as Altamont began the destruction of the sweet, vacuous aspirations of Woodstock... Oh, there it is. Jonestown has decisively... he was the leader of Woodstock. Okay. Jonestown was decisively contaminated the various vagabond zealotrites that have grown up, nourished, and sometimes turned sinister. So I get it. It's like there was the 60s, love, and the 70s was filled with dark, Vietnam, lost souls. Perfect for taking, either to kill
or looking for something,
or to brainwash or to use.
Mm-hmm.
But 900 people, yo. Have you seen those photos?
Yeah.
Those aerial shots.
Yeah.
It's just
when they're all
bodies everywhere. And listen to a podcast the other day. Cyanide, not that much. You don't need that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit,
and it'll
it basically removes the oxygen in your body. So you suffocate.
So you're like choking to death.
But I mean, it's not like. But you're just, everything is suffocating. I mean, your heart and your brain obviously are the ones that need it the most. And 1 or 2 minutes, that's it.
I do remember listening to something on the BBC, and they were talking about Jim Jones and saying how that whole looming doomsday thing was a part of the, how do you say, appeal. That's not the word I want to use, but like to reel people in of like, the world's about to end anyways, so come be a part of this, that we're doing.
They had no idea. They had no idea we're going to get worse than that. Like, if you thought the world was going to end in the 70s, girl.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
Didn't know what was coming. And then also I think of, I'm sorry, this is just side piece. I just think of like the kind of people, like you're literally just preying on weak-minded people to be able to convince them, people to leave their homes, leave their country, go to another country, and like, oh, we're gonna drink this specific, like, because this wasn't like a like, oh, we're having a party and some people are sipping the punch. It's like, no, everybody needs to drink this, and like that's just. I think the point I'm trying to make is like, it's just as sinister as these killers who are directly like stabbing or raping and murdering these people. All I'm saying is that like to the brain or to this or whatever, it seems like, oh, well, he just killed them through drinking and then he killed himself. But it's like, no, it's just as sinister because this is all like thought out and methodical. And again, it's just preying on people that are weaker than you, though maybe not physically, but in that case, through them in the mind, weaker in the mind. Anyway,
I don't know if it was Jim Jones or it was another guy, but I'm pretty sure this must have happened too. That there weren't 900 people, right? You gotta think at least 1 or 2 people were like, never mind. And those never minds, those were murdered.
They weren't.
So there were, I forget, this probably wasn't Jim Jones, but I'm pretty sure that some people like, second guess this whole thing, wanted out, and they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, leave."
No, there were,
and then were either burned or shot or whatever. It was those
because there
were
were people
killed.
who didn't want. I remember on the thing I was listening to, they were saying how on that plane that took them to wherever they were in South America, there are people who were like had second thoughts, like actually, I don't want to get on this plane and there were a couple people who like they were able to leave, and luckily they're alive to be able to say, this is what happened. And luckily I didn't go down there, but
just
but a lot of them, like you said, were killed and just like, well, you're gonna be forced to go along.
I also mentioned recommendation of a 1980s miniseries called Guyana Tragedy: The Story of Jim Jones by Willem A. Graham. And that is me ironing out the sickos of the 70s.
There you go. Sickos of the 70s.
The sickos. Jesus. And has it stopped? No.
Because like you said, that was a time when people were like leaving their doors open, but now we know like, oh, we don't do that. Like you need to lock your doors.
I go throw out the trash and I lock the door. Like I don't, there's nothing I won't lock the door for.
Yeah.
Especially being a true crime lover. Like, that this is it. It's me and the locked doors. There's in a moment that the killer is going to come into, it's you, the locked doors, and whatever weapons you got in your house. The police is not going to get there in time.
Exactly.
That's the truth.
Exactly.
So better live kind of like that, where, and I'm not just saying like be fearful of everything, but like lock your doors, have some sort of escape plan. What's the weapon in your house that you're going to use? Do you want to look for a weapon when the killer is already in your house, or do you want to know that I'm not saying get a gun. I'm just saying like this is my weapon. Like this will always be there, and I will always.
No, my mom has always said, like, she's always told us, like, if you're in a situation that's a surprise, like, don't try and go beat up yes, fight, but she would always say, don't fight with your hands, like, grab something, because that's going to be a weapon as opposed to like hurting yourself, trying to beat them or stop them or, defend yourself or whatever. And so, yeah, like,
also disclaimer,
have to grab.
If you can run, that is ultimately the best. Like,
exactly. If you can run, just run.
Consider them Jason. Consider them Freddy Krueger. You don't fight those people. You run from those people.
Yeah. No, you're so right. So right.
Awesome.
Whoop whoop. First episode back. We made it through. So for our salutations.
Right. I didn't write those or even think about them. I need like an example now, because look, how do you write these? What do we say?
Oh no, it's what is it? Something especially yourself. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, fight for what you love,
and find out how deep is your love,
and lock your doors,
closing blinds.
Yep.
Not everybody is out there for love.
Just hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your husband. Just all of it.
Christ, that is still the moral of the story.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you all are already in your homes, so this should be easy. Just lock it.
Lock it. Yeah. Fight for what you love, especially for yourself, guys. And self-love means locking your doors, okay? Making sure you're safe.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the Ants Human Stars podcast with Caleb and Digo. Stay connected and get updates about new episodes by visiting our website, antshumanstars.com, and by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive rating and review, and share about us with your community on social media. Thanks, y'all. We really appreciate it.